Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Sergeant here at Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Now, here at Bulletproof Selling, we believe one thing above all others. Our mission, our mantra is to remove hope from the way that people sell. If you are in sales, if you're running a business, then you know the cost that hope has. It affects your plans, it lowers performance, and it absolutely detracts from any profit that you would make as you're out there every single day, hoping that the right people get in touch with you, hoping that you have great conversations, hoping you remember everything you've learned from every deal that's come that way in your past, and of course, hoping that this person becomes a customer and creates referrals. That's a lot of hope. And so what I do here as the Chief Sales Sergeant is bring you lessons from the people that couldn't rely on hope because the stakes were too high for them. Lessons from the battlefield to bring into business. And of course, this is a guest-based show. We have been able to have guests here for over 100 episodes now. Folks from Hall of Fame speakers to best-selling authors to people that have been in sales, that are in sales, and people that are out there right now helping salespeople achieve the things that they got into this business to achieve. So out of every single episode, we're going to help you remove hope, but we're also going to create a system that you can use no matter the size of your team or the size of your goals to just take hope out of one more piece of your sales cycle. And when we talk about selling, something that I think is the most underappreciated part about this is to keep in mind why you're in sales in the first place. You could be working in a lot of different places. If you're in sales, you probably are okay with being rejected all the time, if not just occasionally. You're probably okay with going time periods where you're not making as much money as you would have otherwise, which means you are willing to accept some risk in your career path. That means you are one of the rare folks in the world, whether you are an inside salesperson, an outside salesperson, or you're running a business and you just happen to be in charge of sales. One piece that we miss as salespeople is keeping track of balance. Now, I know this sounds crazy coming from somebody that spent some combat tours learning about how to keep mission first, but I've learned as a salesperson, and I definitely saw in the military, the folks that were great at maintaining balance had higher performance. They were able to bring more of themselves to the table. They were able to activate more of their potential. They were able to do things that the people that didn't have balance simply didn't have access to. So when I came across today's guest, who I've gotten to meet in person a few times, he's Dr. Travis Parry. He's an expert not only in helping salespeople more fully activate the potential that they have, but in helping them achieve balance as well. So I'm try not to bring on guests on this show if you've been with us for more than one episode, folks that are a little bit more in the clouds with their mindset. I knew that when I wanted to bring Dr. Parry onto this show today, that he'd be able to give us some takeaways, some tactics that we could actually bring onto the battlefield of business. Things that wouldn't just be useful in our offices when we're not in front of prospects, but things that will actually help us sell more so that we can serve more. So without further ado, because I'm looking forward to this conversation as much as any of my listeners, I want to welcome to the show Dr. Travis Parry. Sir, welcome to Bulletproof Selling.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Excited to be here, buddy.
So, Dr. Parry, I'm going to call you Dr. Parry because I know you and I have had some laughs about this. Dr. Parry has a PhD, not an MD, which means if he's on an airplane and they call for a doctor, he's not going to be the one to raise his hand. So,
yeah, don't call me. Don't call me, please. No, I know some basic first aid. I can put a Band-Aid on. Other than that,
beyond that, don't do it. Yeah. So I would love for people to learn a little bit about you because you didn't just come out of the world of academia. You had a career as a salesperson before you decided that in order to be a better server, a better servant, a better helper of salespeople, of business people in general, you needed to get a little more education. So walk us through your career path through sales, because I know you were in charge of selling for a long time, into your career as now an academic that very quickly transitioned back into helping business owners and salespeople. Give us that 30,000-foot overview of your journey.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So number one, I feel like I've always been a salesperson, and anyone who says I'm not in sales, they don't understand persuasion. They don't understand selling at the core, because we're always persuading. We're always selling. I'm persuading my kids to put on their shoes, to brush their teeth at night. Like everything that we do as leaders, quite honestly, is persuasion. So you can call it what you want, but I started in financial services. I initially wanted to be a public speaker, but I had an academic counselor who said, we don't have a program for that. Why don't you become a financial advisor? And then, you can be really good at that. And then you'll be a public speaker someday. And I thought, okay, great. That's what I'm going to do. So I jumped in as a financial advisor, found out very quickly the ones who made it were the ones that understood persuasion. They understood selling, and they understood how to do this professionally. The old days of hard school or old school selling, the hard way of doing it was just gone. And we had to learn very quickly the art of being able to persuade our clients to do business with us. And, as I began to really make my brand known as a financial advisor, I started seeing problems in the industry, problems with my clients. And that's why I noticed they were out of balance. Like, here I'm helping with their money and their finances for what? So they can work more, so that they can just earn more and just continue to be on this conveyor belt that never ends. And I can see how salespeople, myself included, can get stuck in this, what I call workaholic trap, where they feel like, man, it's just never ending. It's a never ending battle. To use your analogy on the battlefield of sales, like it never ends unless you know how to really position yourself for great balance, reward yourself, and take breaks and utilize the time that you have spent for selling whatever it is that you're doing, whatever business you're building, so that you can enjoy life. How I transitioned to academia, that bridge was an interesting one. I thought I was done with my bachelor's degree. I was the first ever to graduate from college in my family. So I thought, that's it. I'm done. Woohoo. See you later. And I remember the day I took my last test. I cried tears of joy. I was excited to be done. But it became very apparent that if I was going to figure out this balance thing, that I had to get more education. So I got a master's in psychology, which led to eventually a PhD in family and human relations. And that was absolutely not something I ever intended on doing. You and I have joked around about, the doctor thing, but I think what it did position me as the expert in balance for financial advisors and other salespeople who understand both the academic part and the real world that people need. They need that application.
As you've been out there making sales calls, been rejected, and then you've also been that salesperson that was doing very well, but realized some things are flying out of whack here. There's some things banging around in the engine that we shouldn't be hearing because of the effort I'm putting into this area. So if we were in sales and you're listening or you're watching right now, I know my top question, probably yours, is, well, I like the idea of balance, but if this isn't going to help me sell more, then this isn't going to get me any closer to my goals. So talk to me a little bit about how balance actually improves performance.
Yeah, great question. So I think a lot of times people think that, well, balance is doing everything at the same time. I've got to go out and just be superhuman. And, unless you're Superman, you can even pull, time back. It still doesn't matter. Like, you can't do everything. You can't be everywhere. You can't be all things for all people. So you really have to decide where you're going to make time for the priorities in your life. At work, I really believe in the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle of finding where your sweet spot is. If you're truly a salesperson, but you're doing paperwork, or you're doing odd jobs, or you're doing those things that aren't in what I call your sweet spot, your top 4 or 5 most productive and fulfilling activities. If you're not there, you're not going to enjoy what you're doing. Think about the sweet spot, like in, a baseball bat, a hockey stick, a golf club, whatever it is, where you just swing and you feel like you didn't even have to do much work at all. That is what a lot of psychologists call flow. And when you're in that state, you love what you do. So the first step really is to figure out, where is that? How do I get there? Then you can look at all the other activities that you are probably wasting your time with, all the other less, priority in your life that are at work. And you can either delegate those, delete it, or nowadays automate it. Automate it if you can. Because automation is meant to enhance, not to detract from the work that you're doing. And really just draw a fine line. Anything below that line, refuse to do anymore. Find a system that can take care of that. If that's a person, automation, or just simply delete it. My book, Achieving Balance, has a whole system and process about that. But I would say, based on the what we're talking about today, how we can increase sales, like honestly, right there, most people I talk to, they are not in their sweet spot only 20 to 25% of their day. Oh, I'm a financial advisor. Really? How much of the time are you in your top 5 activities? 20%. Well, what are you doing with the other 80% of their time? They are avoiding doing the things that are actually leading to more prosperity. In this case, if you're a salesperson, if you're doing networking and maybe some other low level activities that are connected, I can see how that's related. But if they're not really those top 5, you should minimize it, delegate it, delete it.
I love it. So the idea of then having balance, which is taking a conscious look at how I'm spending my time, is the thing that's going to allow me to make sure I'm placing focus on the things that are actually most important. Because otherwise, like any salesperson, I could be opening up my email account and just working top to bottom. I could open my CRM and just start banging down tasks in my dashboard, but they may not be the highest priority tasks. They may not be the ones that are actually going to close deals or that will be with the people that I might actually want to do business with. Instead of just
That's
selling
right.
to everybody, maybe I take a more focused approach. So I want to ask you a really targeted question. And this is the
Yeah.
question that we ask every single one of our guests, but I'm going to try to apply it to balance. Where do you see salespeople relying on hope in that they're spending their time in their sweet spot?
Yeah. So that's a really good one. I know the hope, is not a sales strategy. I will say this: if you have a system, what happens is your brain can relax. Your brain
Mm,
relaxes. If you step up to the plate and you're a major league baseball player and you've never swung a bat before and you've not spent millions, of hours in a cage trying to hit that little white thing coming at you at 90 miles an hour, you're a deer in a headlights. Like, you're afraid of that, right? But if you've done that thousands of times and you have a system and a process for executing, it's no brainer and you'll find the sweet
mm,
spot. So I think the biggest issue that most people have when they want tips, they want tricks, they want hacks. There's no tips, there's no tricks, there's no hacks with the Make Time Institute. We have a system, and that
mhm,
system works. It's a process that over time, it's going to cause major change. And your schedule is going to be upside down. But if you can adjust to it and over time make it a process, I don't even have to think about my days. I know what my themes are for the day. I know how many hours I work. I have an ideal calendar so that it allows me to come home. This is the other part of balance. Once you're really great and you're super productive in the time at work, well, I had a client came to me, was like, Travis, I have 5 kids at home and I want to be there. I'm working 80 hours. Thank you for helping me be more productive. But what's to prevent me from being a productive workaholic? Well, the system does. The system says we're not just looking at your work time, we're looking at every area of your life. And you build that into your calendar, you follow the protocol, you follow the system, then you're going to go home. You're going to be there with your family. You're going to spend time with your wife. You're going to be at church. You're going to do those things that you enjoy doing. You're going to be exercising like I was this morning. Even though I don't like running, I was out running again, Sean. But I do it. It's because of the system. It keeps me in track and in balance. So I don't become a productive workaholic and just work, 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 work now that I'm more productive.
And it seems like a lot of salespeople would be able to get an intuition for where their most productive time is spent. Maybe it's client facing with this particular type of job title, client with this vertical of industry. But then we can also, as you mentioned, get kind of trapped in the middle of the day by just tracing rabbit holes and figuring out, all right, well, I need to respond to this email, but then I need to look this up and have to go into my CRM to find that. And before I know it, an hour and a half has passed and it's not productive time. So I'm curious, where do you think salespeople would be most served by having a system that would allow them to identify where their sweet spot is? Or would it be a way for them to kind of pull their head out of the weeds a couple of times throughout the day to make sure that they are on track, that they are moving in the right direction? I know you love hiking just as much as I do. So this is a way for us to kind of take our compass out and check it in the middle of a hike.
Yeah.
Am I moving in the right direction, even if I'm bushwhacking through a bunch of trails? Which do you think would be more helpful, that way to find the sweet spot or the way to make sure I'm staying in my sweet spot?
Yeah, I think initially defining it is going to be most
Okay.
important. And then I like your analogy there on the hike, like checking the roadmap. Where am I? What's my pulse? I think a lot of people, they want to go ahead and set goals for themselves. Like, I want to be goal setter. And that's fantastic. I am pro goal setting. However, we do it wrong. We go ahead and we try to, map out our road when we don't have a system in place first to run on. It's like, I'm going to go run barefoot in the mountains. I don't have the right, footwear, the clothes. Like, that's a recipe for disaster. If you've never done that and you don't know what you're doing, like, you're going to destroy yourself. Bad analogy, but you get what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
If we can have the ideal calendar built out and you know where your sweet spot is at work, then you can take the wasted time out of your schedule and you can now reinvest it into other areas of your life that are more important, because that's the reason why you're working. The reason why you're working is to provide for you, your family, your loved ones, to have a good, enjoyable life. But a lot of people spend all of their time just doing that, never really enjoying it. The ones that are truly balanced, they're living their highest priorities in life. And I have yet to meet a married businessman or woman who the highest priority in their life is their career.
Right. It's usually spirituality or physical health or family, something besides business. It has to be.
Yes, yes. But I mean, people, oh, Travis, we spend all this time at work. Does that mean, no, listen, we have a joke around here because we had a client we interviewed one time for our book, Achieving Balance, who said, yeah, I'm balanced. I work 50% of the day.
Exactly. 12
that's
hours. It's
not
cool.
that's not it. That's not it. Like, it's not work-life balance. I destroy that myth. It's not work-life. It's life balance. Work is part of your life. Your career is part of who you are. Yes, you might act differently or have different roles in the work setting, but I'm the same guy. I'm transparent. I'm Travis Parry. I'll tell you about my personal life, and then at home we'll talk about work a little bit here and there. The reality is that we're not, flowing equal between all these 10 areas of life that I outline in the book. We are simply trying to figure out how we can spend time in our highest priorities. Yes, we're going to work 30, 40 hours a week. Most people I meet with are working 60 to 70, and they think they're working 50 or 45. Oh, I'm working 45. I'm working 50. The question I ask them is, have you ever tracked it? Have you
Very
ever
few have.
tracked it?
Very few have. So
Right.
I'd like to build a system, Travis, around staying in our sweet spot. And of course, we're going to
Yes.
have to identify what the sweet spot is in sales. Now,
Yep.
I want to preface all this. If you're in a spot where you can take notes as a listener, I want you to underline something, because Travis and I are going to do something that's very rarely done in the field of sales, which is give you a way to determine for yourself where your best time is spent. This doesn't work if you just take the same 70 hours a week that you're working and spend all your time in those 70 hours. Balance does not happen that way. It happens because we can spend our time more efficiently and then free up those other hours for our family, for our physical health, for our spirituality, the other priorities that you have in your life. So, we're going to create a tool, but understand that just like any tool, like a saw, I can build a house with a saw or I can take a house apart. I don't want you to use what we're about to build to take your house apart. So keep in mind that this is going to make you more efficient as a salesperson. Do not fill that time with more efficiency in sales. Fill that time with the things that help you achieve balance in your life. All right, so that's like the warning label
No, you're
on the
good.
outside of the system we're about to
Yeah.
build. Okay,
I love it. For
so
all productive workaholics out there, that's a great warning
yeah,
label to have. I'm going to copy that, Sean.
do absolutely. So the idea behind creating any system in sales is that every new system trims away a little bit more hope from our sales strategy. Because, like you said, hope is not a sales strategy, but so many salespeople, consciously or unconsciously, end up relying on it. So, with
Yep.
this system, in this trimming process, we're just going to use the acronym TRIM, TRIM. It's a very simple way for us to build a system and make sure that we can improve it and measure it. So, the T element in TRIM is the trigger. I need to know when to pull this system off the shelf. And because we're trying to figure out where my most productive time is spent in sales, is this something you advise that we do like right now because we're probably spending time unproductively? Is it something I need to do every quarter? Is it something I should do every year? Where
Yeah.
do I start with just pulling this off the shelf to figure out when is a good time to figure out where my sweet spot is?
Yeah. I would say the trigger here, honestly,
Mm,
is the tracking. Trigger is tracking. Track first. What's interesting about, and I learned this in the PhD process, just by asking the right questions, and you know this as salespeople, you're actually doing research. What? Don't tell me that. No, I'm serious. Just asking the question, you're formulating the question. You're actually doing the research on this. So if you just ask yourself the question, how many hours am I spending in every area of my life? There's 168 areas, or excuse me, 168 hours for a week. So look at it in an ideal week and just track it first. A lot of times, as we track, we don't want to report the bad stuff, right? We don't, oh no, like I didn't, if we track our diet, like, oh, I didn't eat that. Like, so we don't do it, right? If we're tracking. So right away, just as we start to track, we actually start to make change. That's the easiest way to do this, is to start tracking. You and I can sit down on a paper and we can draw it out. And I talk extensively about that in the book, and I show that. But the very first trigger, I would say, is to track.
And then because we're starting as salespeople, and I want to make sure that this really applies into a salesperson's career, because again,
Yes.
warning label on the outside of this package, you can do this for any area of your life, but I want to really dial into sales. If I'm tracking the time that I'm spending on the job, so
Yeah.
this is making calls, it's managing my CRM, it's doing research for my outreach, it's conducting outreach, being in meetings. If I have any kind of debriefing process included there, if I'm putting together quotes, or I'm also in a role where I'm responding to customer service problems, include that as well. So I'm basically tracking how I spend my time at work and on what activities.
That's
So
right.
that's going to be my trigger to identify where my sweet spot is. But now that I've got this whole map, right, my 40 hours a week, my 80 hours a week, however long I'm spending in a work mode, what do I need to do with this information before I step into identifying where my sweet spot is? Or
Yeah.
is that the repeatable part of this process? 5 steps to identify your sweet spot.
Yeah. That's the first one. You got to know,
Okay.
where am I actually spending time now? What am I
Okay.
actually doing? Once you have, oh, these are the things that I'm doing, and now you know how much time you're spending, you're going to feel so much better about creating an ideal calendar for yourself, even just at work, even just in the career section, because now you can
Right.
see the change. Like, oh, wow, I'm actually on the job 60 hours a week. I would track checking your email after hours, replying to text messages
Mm.
for work clients, anything that is work related. I don't care if you're in an office or in a car or on your vacation. It's work, people. It's not work, Travis. I enjoy it. I don't care if you enjoy it. You're supposed to enjoy it, but that's not balance. It's not.
Right.
And it's not being present with your kids. The thing that they need is you present, not looking at your phone. So there's a difference here. So I'd say track it, then look at all of the activities. Now you have, let's say, oh man, I actually do 15 or 20 things during any given average week. Now is when you can prioritize those and find what are your top 5. I give you the very first one. And Sean, you mentioned this earlier, like, oh, I checked my email, I do my task list. I make mandatory. Some things like, you just have to kind of drop the hammer on this one. It's called processing. I spend a half an hour to an hour a day going through emails, task lists, my CRM, and just doing all the things that have to get done. In the book, Achieving Balance, that you can get at achievingbalancebook.com for free, just pay the shipping, I actually outline the whole process for processing. It's not worth going and spending all the time, but it is a step-by-step solution so that you can get through your stuff fast and then get
Mm.
to the other 4 activities of your day. But if you don't do that one first, if you don't do processing first, then you get caught doing it in between appointments or throughout the day, or checking your email while you're on a live stream with somebody really cool like Sean, and you're not paying attention. Oh, but Travis, I can multitask. Actually, you might be able to multitask better than others, especially females, but you're still multitasking, which means you're not giving it your all 100% present energy. So I would say make that your number 1, and then look at what's number 2, 3, 4, and 5. Whatever those top 5, maybe even squeeze in the 6th one if you really, really like it. Squeeze those in. That's where you should be spending 80 to 90% of your workday.
How do I identify which of those 5 priorities is really the thing I need to be spending the most time in? Like that's the do or die, always has to get done. We think of like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, probably 80% of my revenue is coming off of maybe 1 or 2 of those tasks.
Yeah.
And the rest are just left out into the 80%. How do I
Yeah.
identify which of my 5 tasks I need to make sure are always given the time that they're due?
Good question. So Doug Carter, very influential in my life. He was a coach, mentor of mine. I met him a long time ago at another event training that I went to on sales for financial advisors. And while I was there, he's like, you know what? We need to focus more on our way of being.
Mm,
Our way of being is so important. If you don't know Doug, he's got a book out there on way of being, and it's just incredible. But he taught me about this prioritization game. And I use it in my book, and I give him credit for this. I didn't come up with this, but you take your activities and you ask yourself, if I could only have one. Now, what happens is we tend to be like, well, I'm a logical being, so I need to have the chicken before the egg. I need to do this before that. Don't think that. Just take the top 2 that you've put on your paper or on your doc, your Word doc, whatever it is, and just ask yourself, if I could only have one today. And if that
mm,
was make sales calls or go to a networking meeting. You have to decide, because we're making decisions every single day. And if you don't know what your highest priorities are, then you're going to be given choices. And it's usually good and good, not good and bad. Those are easy
right.
choices. It's good and good that gets us confused. But we need to find out what's highest priority. Now, that might change in a moment. That might change if there's an emergency or something. That's rare. But over time, again, a system stepping into that batter's box as a major league baseball player, you're not asking yourself, do I dip my shoulder right now? Do I straighten my elbow? Like, what do I do? No, you have a system, you have a flow. So once you figure out what that highest one is, and you go through the whole system and you do it over and over and over again until you have your top 4 or 5. What I found is that it typically tends to be the ones that are highest paying, but
Mm,
also most fulfilling. If you just
mm.
went on what pays you the most, you may be in a job that you hate. And if you're a
That's true.
salesperson that hates selling, it's probably not a great fit. Let's be honest. This is an up and down roller coaster of a ride that's very emotional. And you need to understand, if this is not your passion, maybe you should find something else. If it is your passion, then find out what is the most best productive use of your time so you can stay doing this well.
And this allows us to do something that I know I've heard come out of your mouth, which is to stay in our strengths.
That's right.
If I find that networking is the most fulfilling thing for me because I'm an extrovert, I love talking to other people face to face, then that may be the best way for me to sell. Where other people on my team, they may be better on the phone, they may be better flying to an individual client's office, and that's the best way they sell. But for us
Right.
to be able to take a look at our calendar and individualize our priority to the thing that's most fulfilling for us means that we will not run away from that because it's the
Right.
most fulfilling thing. I'm excited to go to a networking event if that's my
Yes.
strength. That's where I
Yes.
need to be. Okay, I love this. Love it. So we got the trigger element. We've made it repeatable. Got a couple of steps that we'll be able to line out now. The iron trim is something
Okay.
that we learned to do on the battlefield to make sure that we were keeping up with the changes that were happening out there, which is improve. So if
Ah,
I've identified where my strength is, where my sweet spot is, and I know to spend more time in that spot because it is more fulfilling, how do I improve this system as I change, as the market changes, as the customers that I serve change? What are the things I can do weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever schedule you'd recommend to make sure that I'm still in my sweet spot or that I'm still spending time each week in my sweet spot?
great question. I love this. I love the logical flow here, Sean. This is great. And I don't expect anything less of a very systems focused guy. So I love this. This is really cool. All right. So improve. This is a problem for most people. They start a process, they make a big change, and then they don't actually do it. You know
Mm,
why? They're improving too much. So I would say err on the side of caution when it comes to improving your ideal calendar. Stick with it for 90 days. You don't go up to the batter's box and change your swing every time you swing. Again, back to the baseball analogy. I wasn't a big baseball player, but it's America. Come on, we got to be
mhm.
American here. It's baseball. But you got to understand that if you got up there every time and changed exactly what you're doing, you're messing up your system. So I believe in times and seasons. A season lasts 90 days, unless you live in Utah and winter lasts 7 months. Okay.
Right.
Travis, you can move. I love the mountains. Anyway, so I would say about every 90 days, at the time when the seasons change, check your ideal calendar. Is this still what I need to be doing? For example, summertime, everybody's out of office. We're on vacation. We're traveling with our family. We're doing all these other things. And I know as a salesperson, this is actually very frustrating for you as well, trying to get a hold of people who aren't back for 3 weeks. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I totally get it. So why are you working 90 hours during the summertime if people aren't around? Why don't you adjust your calendar? I'm just saying, as an example, and realize that probably fourth quarter or late third quarter is being more productive. So change up your schedule come September. School season, if we follow the kids' school, it tends to be something similar. And I'm assuming you have kids. If you don't, again, just every 90 days, go back and check it. Do I need to get up earlier to go to the gym now? Do I need to, stay later to be, for coaching kids soccer teams or whatever it is for you? Make those changes, but try not to over improve.
That's amazing advice. So we've got the improve part of this done. Now, finally, the M, the last letter in this wonderful acronym we're using to trim hope away from our sales strategy. We're going to measure this.
Okay.
We're measuring something, though, that's not related directly to closed deals because we're identifying where our sweet spot is, which ideally does create more closed deals for us. It does create a bigger pipeline, but it's also going to create more fulfillment. We're actually going to enjoy our job more. So how would you recommend I measure this in a way that does involve some objective metrics? So I know at the end of the year, this is a go or a no-go to keep using this system.
Yes. Good. So if you're looking to improve every 90 days, I'd measure it every 90 days. We're actually, I have an app that I'm in process. It's in beta right now, called Time Lift, Lyft. It's made for financial advisors, but anyone who has a schedule that they track can use it. And you can see where your deals are. You can see how much time you've spent. It tracks it in a calendar form. You can use Outlook. You can use Salesforce. It integrates. So what I would suggest is a lot of times, especially if you're in the people business, you got 60 to 90-day sales cycles. Again, I would measure every 90 days. How am I doing? How has improving my time actually led to more deals? Because it will. I work 25 hours a week. We doubled and tripled our business these last 2 or 3 years over time because we're so efficient here at the office. I don't have a huge sales team. I've got 1 or 2 who are here part-time and full-time with me. And, I delegate to them the other tasks that they cannot do. So depending on where you're at, if you're the one being delegated to, it's a different story. If you're the one who has the more flexible time, look and leverage that time, but measure backwards. How did I do these last 90 days? And I think that's going to help you to improve. What do I need to improve on? And if you have this tracking device, this Time Lift app or anything that you're using, a spreadsheet or whatnot, there's even some tools online that you can utilize to, analyze what you're doing on your computer. Measure that, because likely the reason why you're not making sales the way you want to be is you're not using your time most effectively, and you're not measuring and utilizing your energy to keep the balance, to keep going. Because if you burn yourself out, you do no one a service.
Not working in that sweet spot of where you are most fulfilled as a salesperson. So amazing system, Travis, end to end, giving us something that we haven't been able to address here on Bulletproof Selling, which is how to create balance and more sales simultaneously. So for folks that want to know more about you, I know you've got a very built out way to serve a lot of different salespeople in a lot of different industries. Where do they go for more information on you?
I would say go to travisparry.com. That's Parry with an A. And you'll be able to download my book, Achieving Balance. And I also have a new book called Balance Growth, which talks more even in depth on how to increase your sales as an influencer. So, if you're an employee of a company, Achieving Balance, the book is going to be awesome. And I have details there to get that for free. Otherwise, pre-order the Balance Growth book that you can also get on the website at travisparry.com.
Amazing, sir. So I'll make sure that we link Travis in all of the release notes here. And if you're following us on LinkedIn, you're definitely going to see him. Make sure you're following his work. I've gone through the book that he mentioned, well worth the time. All right, I got a whole bunch of books on my shelf that I've been meaning to go through, but I made sure to bump Travis's to the front because I know how valuable it is to be more fulfilled in how we sell so that we can serve more. So, Travis, thanks so much for being here with us. For all of the listeners out there, make sure that you are following us on our live stream channel on YouTube, Bulletproof Selling. If you're listening to this on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, best thing you can do for us, leave a review so that people know they don't have to rely on hope, that we can build better systems into how we sell so that we're not just selling more, but serving more. Travis, thank you so much for serving the sales community today, giving back to the organizations and industries I know that have given so much to you. Let's get out there together and make selling bulletproof.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.